So you really need Sam to be here then. Well, Taryn's coming, right?
Taryn's coming.
Yeah, she's on her way, okay. So.
I'll be there in less than 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
All right,
You're
fantastic. Yeah, you can tell it's Monday morning. It just goes.
Yeah.
I got up this morning, I'm like, oops, I'm running behind already. So breakfast is waiting in the car.
I'd like to open the meeting for the EDA. Today's April the 5th, and meeting is open. Let's have a roll call. Jeff, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. Roll call, we'll have Michael Laws,
Here, present, accounted for?
Bruce Sanders, not here. Samuel Rice, not here. Dr. Silverman,
Here.
Taryn, Bryce Rowland,
Here.
and Roy Carter here. So we have a quorum present. I'd like to go ahead and get the meeting started. We're running a little bit late. Don, can you give us, oh, we have invited Jeff into the meeting, correct? Yeah. Okay, good. Don, could you give us the financial status, please?
I sent a financial report out to you, I think on Thursday, that shows the balances in the two accounts you have. The checking account, it was a beginning balance of $47,164.11, had minimum interest or nominal interest of $1.73. The county CARES reimbursement that had not been received at your January meeting was received, as well as $8,400 in administrative fees. Debits, there were 2 CARES grant checks, each from Kilmarnock and Irvington, and then the 2 grant checks that you approved at your January meeting. So that shows an ending balance as of February 28th, because I have not gotten the March statements yet, of $32,565.84. There are 4 checks outstanding that total $17,000, so an available balance out of that checking account would be $15,565.84. In the CD, the beginning balance of January 1 was $62,760.62. Interest for January and February, again, the March bank statement has not been received, was $309.80, leaving an ending balance in that account of $63,070.42. So all of the administrative fees have been collected. We just got the $8,400 from the Mariners Museum, so the next administrative fee that will come in will be in July, and then again in November and December. So that's how things stand right now.
How much does that represent of the 10 million? Because these are the bonds that are out, right?
Yeah, but that 10 million is an annual
Oh, I see.
thing.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, so you could still issue bonds up to 10 million.
Yeah, I hear you.
We've had this conversation before.
Yeah.
Dan
yeah.
Siegel with Sands Anderson is really the bond guru, so to speak, and he knows that the Lancaster EDA is eager to issue bonds, and I'm sure he'll keep us in mind, but I'm not aware of any on the horizon.
Yeah, doesn't look like we have any, because I mean, I remember all of these as being quite a while ago.
Yeah.
It hasn't been any new ones lately. Okay.
Don, the money that's going to be coming in July, do you know how much that is approximately?
It's going to be just a few hundred. The one in July is around $354. So
Right, it's listed on there.
then you'll get around 12,500 in November and 4,700 in December.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Okay, financial report. I'd like to make a motion that we accept it.
A second.
It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Don. Next on the agenda is the,
Before we go there, though, and I don't know if this is the time on the agenda to discuss this, but I mentioned those outstanding checks that are kind of, I don't know, for lack of better words, they're kind of just slushing around there. We have 10,000 for Patterson's, we have Visions, Lead River Counties, 5,000, and we have CARES, I don't know what the CARES are, but there are 2,000. So there's a total of 17,000 that are not being, those are checks that have been granted, but have not been cashed,
They have not been cashed.
right? And the question I have, and I would like to have, maybe, Jeff, if you have some views on this, I mean, because this is money that if people are not interested in it, especially, well, the Patterson's is from last October. The Visions Lead River Counties is from last July, so that's coming up on a year. I don't know anything about the CARES money, but I'm just saying that this is money that we could use for other purposes if these entities are not interested in cashing them. So is there something we can do to address that? Jeff, do you have any good thoughts?
Well, yeah, same sort of thought, Charlotte. I guess they're becoming stale dated checks. So I think, I don't know what the deal is behind the Patterson check, but I imagine the Visions Lead River Counties, if we just recommitted that when they become ready again, we'd be willing to grant it and just void this check and move on or something. But I think leaving old checks floating out there is not the best operating practice, in my opinion. So I agree with you.
Yeah, the Visions check is stale dated. That's past 6 months. That was July 16th. The Patterson one was October 15th, so that'll be stale dated in April. But I'm guessing that you all would like for him to have that. And so, you know, if at some point in time, when I can see him face to face, you know, that might be the easiest way to hand it to him. Now, whether or not he cashes it, I don't know. And I mean, as I told you before, we did have a problem with one of the CARES checks for the coffee house. Out of the first round, it was mailed to the address they gave us, and it never was cashed. So it may be something similar in that regard. But And I do know that he has been in Florida quite a bit recently. I don't know if he's back here now.
Yeah, this is Patterson
Yeah,
as well.
and I'm
yeah.
saying this because I don't think Jeff heard me earlier when we were talking about this, so. I know we've got a meeting on the 14th, I think it is, with the
14th.
Business Relations Advisory Committee, so I'm not sure
Correct.
if Julian will be in person or if he'll be zooming in, but that'll probably be my next opportunity to talk to him.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying though is that do we have, I understand that there are special circumstances with each of these checks, but I would like to have some type of kind of policy of how we deal with this. And if people never, let's say, cash these checks, for instance, if people are just not interested,
Well, I think
what do we do about this?
at 6 months, it's a moot point because they become stale dated, correct, Jeff?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
But they're not
180
showing,
days.
right, but in our financial statement, they're not showing as available. And so the thing is that, at what point do they go back into the overall pot?
Well, I think, since I just looked at the dates in the register, the divisions, that 5,000 can come back. That's stale dated, that's beyond.
Right.
So your available balance is really 20,565.84.
Okay,
And the outstanding not cash would be 12,000.
I think the question is the question though really, do they have that opportunity to get the money still after, if they come back to us and say we'd like the check reissued?
Yeah, well, Visions did that one time before.
I know, and I would like to avoid that in the future.
Yeah, I would too.
So I would like to have us agree on some type of saying that, after, when they are stale at that point, if they're not cashed within 6 months, they are forfeited and they go back into the EDA coffers.
Well, I think
And at
that's,
that point, that they cannot come back. I mean, but I'm looking for guidance from our financial guru here that's zooming in.
I think the best method would be to communicate with them, and imagine Visions got the check and then they end up canceling that class because they couldn't do it in person.
Right.
So I think if we were just, since we've already granted them, just sort of give them, when y'all get that up going again, we would entertain a grant, more likely than not accept it, sort of pre-commit to it and just avoid that check, put a stop payment on it and move on. But we need to communicate it to them. And I'm not familiar with the Patterson check. Did he file for a grant for that, or did we just offer it to him?
If you remember, because I remember you were there.
I think I missed that meeting, I
No,
think.
No, I think you were there. Well, I don't know. Maybe we can check the minutes if necessary. But it was Ed Pittman wanted to give some type of recognition to Julian Patterson for the Comcast Compass Center. And so he wanted to kind of show a recognition to Julian for that. And so that was why he was suggesting that we give $10,000 to Julian.
and in the memo line of the check, I wrote appreciation grant, because I think that's
Yeah.
what the EDA
Yeah,
was
but
really trying to show.
It wasn't an application.
No, it wasn't an
No.
application, it was just something the EDA did on its own, just as an
Right.
appreciation for everything that
Yeah.
he and his wife have done for economic development in the county.
Yeah.
So-
I think that to the point of the Visions situation with the $5,000, I agree with you, Jeff. Would just let them know that the money is going to go back in. But I think as a general policy, I think as we issue the money or issue the checks to the grantees that we have awarded, I think they need to know that if they don't, as a general policy, that when we issue the check, they need to know that if they don't cash it within 6 months, then it is forfeited and then it goes back into our coffers. And that would prevent us having checks kind of floating around out there. And I don't know. Does everybody think so?
I agree. I think it's just COVID-related circumstances, Charlotte. Like, we would probably have more of a problem with it had they cashed the check and not done the class. So I think they're being sensitive to the fact that they didn't do the class and they never cashed the check. So I think just to reset the whole thing would keep it a lot cleaner, but we need to communicate to them. And I don't know, Roy, are you still engaged in that? Who took Maryland's place? I know they had a director now. I've lost track of that in the last year or so.
I don't remember who took her place. But I can talk to Paul Shakatano and see, and just tell him that, you know, this will be a grant if they reapply for it, and when they're gonna have classes, then we can reissue it, but as of now, I would just tell him, you know, this check is pretty much null and void. It's been almost
Right.
9 months or so.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand the circumstances completely.
So I'll give Paul a call,
Right.
or actually get to see him in person perhaps.
Right, and but I also think that we need to have, as I said, I'm trying to get to like a general policy so that people understand that these are forfeited, and just because of the fact that in the case of Visions, just because of the fact that the money goes back doesn't mean that the grant is guaranteed. That's what I would want to say, that, you know, okay, the money goes back.
I think we can solve it fairly easily. If we come up with a policy and make a motion that any checks that have been issued will be void after 180 days, then that would be a policy that could be in our website.
Yeah, are you putting
In
a
that
motion
way,
out?
so, yeah, I'd like to make a motion that any checks that are issued for grants or for appreciation, if they are not cashed within 180 days, they go back into our coffers. The checks are null and void.
Well, I think, I had a discussion on it first.
sorry.
Just to make it null and void, the criteria by which the check was issued needs to be fulfilled and/or answered.
We second the
do-
motion and then start discussion.
Big thing.
You second the motion, then start discussion.
I want to discuss it.
You have to second a motion to then, to open
Okay.
discussion.
I'll
so-
second it.
Yeah, I second the motion.
Okay, and if y'all would talk into this so everybody
I'm
can
sorry.
hear, that'd be good.
I was just thinking that, you know, as part of the criteria for accepting the money, we need to define, all of that needs to be within that entire framework, not just cancel the check because then they'll go rush out and cash it. That's what I'm kind of worried about. And the criteria for accepting the money hasn't been met. So as part of the plan for even offering the grant, we need to put into place a plan that says, this is how we operate. If that
Well, we've
makes
had
sense.
this problem, I think, just once before, and I think we just want clarity, you know, on the, you know, they did submit a grant and did not get the money. Actually, the issue that we had before was they were gonna come back to us, and they never did, even though we had approved the money, so they had to reapply. So I'm thinking that, I don't think that we're gonna have this problem in the future. I can't imagine. I think this COVID more than anything else, as Jeff said, because most people get money and they cash it
And
almost
that's what I was
immediately.
thinking, yeah.
Right, but even so, whatever the circumstances are, we should have a policy in place, whether it's COVID, whether it's, you know, something else that comes up, whether somebody forgot, whether, you know, whatever the story is, I don't know, you know, because we did have that circumstances before, which was a little bit ambiguous about why they didn't cash the check for 2 years. I just think we need to have some type of policy in place, and I like
Should-
the 180 days.
Should it be a part, though, of the criteria for getting a grant that it should be shovel-ready to the point where it would be used within 6 months? So I think that addresses maybe what Michael's speaking to, as well as what everyone else is, so we don't need a separate policy. It needs to be a part of the policy of,
We're going to be discussing that later.
yeah, so part of the policy for accepting a grant is that you use the money within 6 months, and I think that takes care of all of it.
I would agree.
Yeah, 'cause
Okay.
if we have to continue to chase down money we dole out, I mean, we shouldn't have to repeat this process. That puts the onus on us to find out where that money is and is it being properly used. If, you know, if it expires, it expires, but it needs to be expired within the framework of essentially due diligence of what you asked for, which we're gonna use it for.
Yeah, I think in these cases, like Roy said, these are sort of COVID-related circumstances with the LEAD program. I don't see that as happening a lot. And then, you know, in Julian's, we gave a request for we gave a grant for one that wasn't requested, which I totally agree with why we did it. But they weren't requesting that. I'd imagine anyone who comes with a request is not going to sit on our checks.
No.
Either that or, maybe we shouldn't have granted it to begin with because they didn't really need it. So I think if we just add it to our grant policy, like Taryn's saying, I think that covers it. We're good to go.
Okay, as I said, we're going to be talking more about the criteria, but what is the motion that we have on the table?
Well,
right
should
now?
we amend the motion that the grant request will have included in it that the money must be used within 6 months?
Sure. I second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion? All right. Motion's been seconded. All in favor, make known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. And Don, you'll get in touch with Julian about the other check?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good, so that shouldn't arise again. All right, let's move on to the internal EDA updates. And first of all, I just want to thank Charlotte for setting up the agenda and going through all of these points. I really appreciate the work and the effort you put into this and getting us moving in this direction.
Amen.
So, the first consideration was the individual EDA board member objectives and area of contribution. Glenn, do we have that screen we can pull up and take a look at that?
Yeah, okay, so this is just a simple PowerPoint, really, that I've been trying to keep track of our deliverables or objectives, assignments over the last couple of years. So you can see on your left there is the names, and I have, removed previous EDA members and replaced them with the new members. And that's the area that is kind of grayed out or blocked out there, because obviously they were not here in 2019. And I left 2020 on there, so just so that we have the different areas included. So we had a whole bunch of goals in 2019, and some of them we were able to deliver on, and some of them are still outstanding. During 2020, there was, with the situation that we were in, I don't think there was a lot of progress on any of them. So really, kind of where we are today then, is that we need to decide on individual areas of contribution or contributions for the different areas, or if we want to change the area. And I think the other thing that I think would be helpful in being able to progress this is to really decide on how much time and resources everybody is willing or able to put towards some of these things, so that we can complete some of them during 2021 if possible. So one of the things we had then was for 2020 refocus, we had website update. Now we have a website, the Lancaster website that Glenn is helping us manage, and thank you very much, Glenn, because you've added a lot of good things there. It's all been on the docket for a while, and so we need to be working on that. What is not on here right now is the strategic plan. As we had last meeting, the NNPDC was here talking about their update to their comprehensive economic development strategy. And since we have basically copied our strategic goals and plan from their SEDS, it would make sense that we would need to kind of take a look at our strategic plan as well. We also talked about putting together an economic or a financial committee for future funds, looking into how we can use those 10 million bonds as well as potentially looking at angel funding. We talked about coming up with a more formal EDA grant request process. Some of the, some of the questions we were talking about now is as far as like what do we do as far as criteria and checks and whatnot will fall into that as well. So those are kind of like the areas that are left over from 2020. And I don't know if there's any new ones or if we can just assign individuals to these. So I'm gonna just be quiet here and let somebody else.
Okay, let me take over the website update. I did just this morning give Glenn a couple of things just to update board members and things like that.
So you're gonna keep the EDA website update? Is that what you want to do?
Yes, I'd like to. And let me tell you what I've looked at. I know I talked about this a couple of years ago, and I had looked at other counties. You know, Virginia's got 95 counties, and some of these counties have some pretty spectacular websites, but most of those are in Northern Virginia, where there's a lot of activity. And then, of course, the second largest area is the Tidewater area. And so I started looking more at the local websites of other counties that are close to us. And Jeff, I just gave out everyone, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I gave out just a copy. This is from Virginia is for Lovers. Virginia is for Lovers has a heck of a great website, and they cover all 95 counties by region. Our region is called the Chesapeake Bay region, and in the cities and towns they have Kilmarnock, Warsaw, Urbana, West Point, Colonial Beach, Tappahannock, Gloucester, and Irvington. And those towns all have their own little website. Unfortunately, they leave off Whitestone, but we are going to get a website in Whitestone pretty soon. The counties they cover, Jeff, are Middlesex, Lancaster, Northumberland, Richmond County, King William, King and Queen, Matthews, Westmoreland, Essex, Gloucester, and King George. So my thought is that these are the counties that really we're going to have the most competition from. You know, we don't have the infrastructure here of the major highways and things to get large industry here. But on the Virginia is for Lovers, they also have the 10 best counties for the demographics and median income, things like that. And then they also break it down into many other aspects. One of them is the best place to raise a family, and number 3 in the county, in the state, is Williamsburg. Now, Williamsburg's only about an hour drive from Lancaster, and of course, some people in Lancaster may be commuting to Williamsburg or to West Point or to New Kent for jobs. And obviously, if that's the case, they could also commute here for jobs. So we have opportunities there. And we also have challenges. And I looked at the websites for the closest counties. And most of the websites are listed under their county government, just like we are, under their boards and commissions. You can look at the either EDA, or some of them have an economic development or industrial development authority. The best website that I have seen that's nearby is Westmoreland County. And Westmoreland, I think, being as close as they are to us, we can look at the advantages that we have over some of the other counties, and also we can look at some of the strengths that they have, because they do list things that we don't have in our website. I don't think that we need to go out and have a huge website like some of these counties. I looked at Augusta County, which of course is way west of us, but it's on I-85. Their demographics are the same, although they have 27,000 people. And they have a website that has been created specifically for them. And as a matter of fact, when you're on the county website, it says, you are now leaving this website to go to their EDA. And it's pretty spectacular, but it's they're swinging for the fences. And I think what we need to do is concentrate on swinging for doubles, singles, maybe a triple here and there. When you look at some of the industry here, I think carry-on trailers is probably one of the largest. They've celebrated their 1 millionth trailer being being manufactured. And, we have opportunities to get some industry. We do have enterprise zones. These other websites show the enterprise zones on them, and they also show the fact that we are located pretty much in the center of the East Coast, so we are within what's considered a one-day drive, which is a 10-hour drive, of 40% of the population of the entire country. So you're looking at, from Atlanta up to New York and everything in between. We're located centrally. We've got advantages. The disadvantage, I think, for us is we don't have the infrastructure, highway infrastructure for manufacturing. So I think we're looking at smaller businesses. And in that case, we're going to be looking at the other counties that are around us for competition, more than other counties throughout the state. One of the counties that was mentioned was New Kent County, and that's not in the counties in the Chesapeake Bay region, but New Kent County was very high on the list of websites and best places to live in Virginia. So we've got counties that are close to us that are hitting in the top 10 of the 95 counties. And I think what I would like to do is ask the board to look at some of these other websites and to come up with recommendations where we can sort of segue into what they're promoting, promote that, plus all the other advantages we have, the tourism, the waterfront, and other things here that would attract smaller businesses, especially work from home now. That's something that no one really mentions in their websites. We have the infrastructure for high-speed broadband in certain areas, and if we could get a co-sharing networking space that would offer high speed to everyone, which is what we're trying to do, broadband, then I think we could get more people to locate here. In some of the meetings that I've gone to, the broadband and school system has come up. And I think our school system now we've shown that it is really, it's really meeting their goals now, and has really, in the last 3 years, has stepped up its game, and hopefully it will keep doing that. Don, who's the head of the school system now? Is it Dan?
Dan Russell.
Yeah.
Dan Russell.
Yeah, Dan presented about a month ago at a meeting what their goals are, and it sounds as though they're doing a great job to hopefully address some of the issues that are there. So, having looked at other websites, I think that we could update AIRS fairly easily without having to go to an outside firm. Now, Glenn, I haven't talked to you about that, but if we gave you the other ideas, is that something that you want in your wheelhouse, or should we actually go to a web designer and possibly pay them for the upgrades?
I imagine it would depend on the extent of what you're doing. I imagine it would depend on the extent of what you're doing, because I think there's a basic infrastructure that's kind of standard to the website that Glenn's running versus something more extensive for a full website.
That's correct. There is a standard structure. We can go one of two ways. You can do a page on the existing website where we can incorporate some enhanced audio visuals, perhaps, and the other option would be to have an external website. I think that trying to do a page within the existing site, within the existing framework, would be about the extent of what I could do. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about an external website, then that might be something you want to look at an outside company on.
Yeah,
Okay.
You should, because Glenn doesn't have time for
Oh,
that, so.
I can imagine. I actually have a meeting this Wednesday with someone who's a professional website designer, just to get an idea of possible cost, not to use him or his services. I just want to know what, I don't think this is going to be terribly difficult. When you look at these other websites, they're talking about, the enterprise zones. They're talking about the quality of life. They're talking about things that we that we haven't really mentioned or touched base on in theirs.
They might also have internal, I don't know. No?
I have background here. I do web
Okay.
development.
Okay.
I'm not volunteering myself
Okay.
for that because, but you're looking at,
Volunteering you.
yeah, $2,000 to $5,000 most likely, is what I would estimate for something fairly on the simple side. And then, I mean, it seems simple, but somebody's then got to be responsible for all of the copywriting, coming up with the image, going through the different wireframes to make sure the design is what people want. Designing a website from scratch is much more robust than people like to think it is, especially when you're all volunteers that are managing the process. I would recommend we actually first start with what we want on there, what really needs to be on the site, what it needs, what we want it to look like, and see if we can fit it in. Because I think what we're talking about doing is going to be static. It's not going to change on a daily basis.
Right.
So if we can just come up with some simple stuff that could go on our existing website first, our webpage, I think that's a good way. And then, and see if we need to broaden it from there. Because creating a website from scratch, it is simple to get it, once you get it up and going, but there's a lot of work that goes into the actual creation process. So, that would be my recommendation on that front. But $2,000 to $5,000 for a decent developer is what I would expect.
Well, some of the simple things that I looked at on these other websites, they talk about Virginia being a right-to-work state. They talk about low taxes. They
Sure.
talk about things like that we don't have currently, and I think would be, if we get those bullet points in and use some of what our competition,
Yeah.
so to speak, has, we could do something simple and then hopefully talk to other people about possibly coming up with a more involved website.
I think that's a great idea, Roy.
So,
Hey.
Roy, are you
Could
going
I-
to take this on? Sorry. Jeff, was that you?
Yeah, could I add something, Roy? I think just two thoughts on that, which I agree with the principal. And I don't know where this fits into the mix, but that Citizens Business Advisory Council, I can't remember what the R stands for, but, after we did not get that CARES grant, we have refocused, and we now have a group working on, it's a big task, trying to align, the county board of supervisors generated and then updated in February 19 a county strategic plan, which is very generic. It was a good effort to put something out there, but it's very nonspecific, and it does not have any tie-ins directly with the SEDS plan. So this group now, and we've added from the Board of Supervisors, Bill Lee and Jason Bellows are on the committee, and we've also added Dan Russell from the school system. We are meeting, and we've had one meeting to sort of get our feet under us as far as the basis, and Don mentioned we have another one, I believe it's next week, trying to align the county's SEDS strategic plan and what the Business Advisory Committee was already working on. So the short answer, it's a really big project. It's not like one or two meeting thing. And we presented it to the Board of Supervisors to give us time to make sure it's done right. I think that might be really fertile ground to what goes into a website. And I know I like to get things done. I think right now, if we run off and develop a website, it might be nice to put some very generic stuff out there, but I don't know if that would move the needle for anything. It'd make us feel good to have a website. And part two is, and Taryn would know this, if we do a website, we can't have it, build it and they will come. We've got to have promotion of it and get it out there. So just getting it up and running is just part one of the cost. You've got to build in the cost of getting traffic there, driving traffic there, and not just having that. So I think we need to put thought into that aspect of it also, is my thought. So that's a very long answer, but I apologize so long, but those were the things swirling around my brain.
I agree with you 100%, Jeff, and I should also mention that when I give that price range of $2,000 to $5,000, that's just building it. That's not a retainer for maintenance. So, and then, or advertising costs, because you're right, you don't just build it and they'll come. There's a lot of things with SEO and marketing that go into it, so.
So given the fact that we have many different deliverables and objectives
Yeah.
to discuss, is somebody else gonna be working on, with Roy on this, or Roy, are you gonna take this on by yourself? Or
No, I would like to have someone else on the board, whether
I've
Mike
got
or
a
Sam or
cousin that
Karen or
does
somebody can.
websites, and I can ask him what he thinks of it.
But I think the question is more content than the site at this point, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to divvy up the work between the board members.
Mhm.
And then whoever takes these on, go off and kind of work on it. And at the next meeting or via email, we'll try to update each other and kind of move this forward. So that's the thought about this. It was a very good, healthy discussion, but we're not going to try to solve the
Yeah.
problem here.
No, not here.
So are you volunteering to work with Roy on that?
I'll volunteer to work with you.
That would be great. Thank you, Michael.
All right.
And Jeff, thanks for all those comments. I agree with you 100% on your thoughts there.
Okay, so I'm going to jump the strategic plan a little bit, and I'm just going to, because the next slide that we have here is the EDA grant request form, so. Glenn,
I got it.
Next slide.
Oh.
Yeah, and that is just the regular, very simple form. I've had a lot of questions when people submit grant requests because it doesn't say on the form who to give it to. It's very confusing. So I'll be more than happy to update the form, send it to Glenn so that we can update it and put it onto the updated version onto the website.
Can I ask that we take a step back just for a second
Sure.
to make sure? Because as I consider what I want to volunteer for, can we kind of come to a decision about or make sure have a consensus about what the objectives are that people are pursuing? Is it the 4 we mentioned? Or is there still open discussion in terms of it going beyond strategic plan website?
We can certainly add
Financial.
other ones. These are just the ones that I have had, and I haven't heard anything from anybody else as far as what they wanted to add, so feel free.
Oh, no, I didn't know if we have, that is the consensus, because
No, these are ones that have come up at the previous meetings, or I have
Okay.
suggested, so if you have other suggestions, I'll be more than happy.
I know I'm interested in the strategic plan aspect of it. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure there was nothing new that I would be missing out on volunteering for stuff. Okay,
Okay, so
can
can we go on with
yeah,
the?
yep,
Okay.
if that's it.
So the grant request form, I will take on to update, if that works with everybody.
One additional thing that should go on there is the address and contact information for the person who's signing it. Because I've gotten 2 request forms in that had no contact information. All it had was a
Just a
signature
signature.
at the bottom. And I'm like, one of them came by email, so I was able to get that from them. But the other one came by, I don't know, it just showed up on my desk. And all it had was the name at the bottom. And so,
So, okay, so address away to send to you here at
Yeah.
the courthouse, as well as the grantee's contact information.
yeah, the
Gotcha.
contact information for whoever's requesting it. 'Cause
I will make sure that is updated. And that needs to be done before we get grant requests coming in July, so.
I will tell you that, as I said, I had received 2 requests. One came in time for this meeting, one came last week, so it'll be at your July meeting. But the one that could have been heard today was premature. When I talked with those folks, they're out of the county, they were just looking at the county and a possible business here, but once I finally got a hold of them, they said they would like to hold off until maybe July or the next meeting, so.
They have to be in Lancaster County, though.
They're not in Lancaster County right now, they're trying to locate in Lancaster County.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
they're looking for a site for a proposed business, and as I said, it was all premature, so
Okay,
I've still got their application, but we're gonna hold on to that until they actually get here.
Should we also add the question, Charlotte, speaking to our new policy, will your project be ready within 6 months to spend?
that's the grant request form, or is that the, okay,
To
on
add the
form.
question to the form, just to
Okay.
make it easy to,
Track it down.
And it sets expectations.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What, can you say that again? Will your project be ready in 6 months?
Will you be ready to spend the money to disperse funds within 6 months on your project? There might be, I'm sure there's a better way to put that, so if anybody else wants to tweak that, please do.
I just wanted to make sure I got it.
At the bottom of the form, you could put, for office use only.
Say what?
Date, at the bottom of the form, put for office use only, date of dispersion.
For office use only. Okay, I might need some.
EDA use only, whatever you want to call it, just so that we have a place to put the date, so that everyone's on the same page.
Okay, I will reach out to you to understand that better, but okay, good. All right, just want to make sure we have that. So that is the grant request form. What other things do we have? We had website updates. We had the strategic plan with the financial committee. How about if I go to the strategic plan? You want to talk about that, Karen? Any thoughts on that, or?
Oh, no, I just like to volunteer for it.
Okay,
Yep.
then I'll put you down for the strategic plan.
So do you have a reference strategic plan that we're altering, or are we developing from, or is it
Yes,
just a
we
clean
do.
slate?
It aligns basically with the existing sets.
Okay.
Right, and since we jumped to that, if maybe slide 4, 5, and 6, you can go down to slide 4, 5. Just start with 4. Okay, so this is part of our strategic plan. So these are the goals. And in the agenda that I sent out, there's the link to it on our website. So it's 4, 5, and 6. So we have, the first goal is really about infrastructure that facilitates the expansion of existing businesses, attracts new high-wage industry sectors. And, there's broadband is certainly something that's fit underneath there. I think the first one, objective A, is underneath there. We also have about transportation infrastructure, available of buildings appropriate for commercial activities. I know there's certainly areas that could benefit from that. Wastewater infrastructure. And if you go to number 2, next slide. This is about workforce equipment, and I think that came across very clearly when we heard from NMPDC, education, training programs, and readiness skills. And I think that's something that we can really try to drive if, that is a very well worth goal. The next slide, please. Third goal here, a more business-friendly atmosphere across the Northern Neck. That can be interpreted in many ways, shape, or form, but development of small business culture, entrepreneurial spirits, like office sharing, incubators that we were talking about. That's kind of in line with that. And the marine hub for the Mid-Atlantic. We had a grant in January that was in line with that as far as the gas opportunities. And I think is there one more slide, or is this the last one? Maybe I just put these 3 on here.
There should be a 4th goal.
Yeah.
Is there a
Yeah.
4th one?
Yep.
Yes, there's 4. Oh, sorry, 7.
I'm going to be
All right,
honest
next
with
slide.
looking at this list.
Yep.
This is a lot to chew on.
It is.
And I'm kind of confused being new to the whole situation of how do we actually measure and respond to all of these and say we've actually done due diligence? This is it's big.
It is big.
So,
It is big, but, you got to realize where we came from, right? We had nothing.
yeah,
We had no goals at all.
right, so one of the things we need to apply to it is something that we can define as achievable.
Okay.
But if I look at the list itself, at some point, I don't know how to define it, the
What-
definition of measurement for achievement.
I think this list, I wasn't there initially, but I think it was more or less, this is a decision-making document in terms of helping do these. It's not what they're pursuing right now, and I think I agree with you. That's one of the things I'd like to work at, is what we can work toward, but more do the projects that are being brought to us, the grant requests that are being brought to us align with any of these. And that was helped make the decision as to whether or not it was a worthwhile project.
Yeah.
So I think it was your starting point for decision-making, and then,
Okay, so, I mean, so how do we make this achievable? I mean, that's, I guess what I'm looking at. Do we put a schedule on this, saying this lead lag concept, this needs to happen before this is our primary focus, this is where we need to be? I mean, there needs to be a plan, not, I mean, these are lofty ideas, and I'm not disagreeing with any of them. It's implementation, so.
Yeah,
I
and
think-
you know, Michael, the thing is that, as I said, we came from nothing, right? We had no goals. These is a framework that
I
is
truly
what,
understand. Yeah, I
hang on,
yeah.
that's what Tara said has really helped us kind of put some structure around that decision making. But if you want to use them for specific goals for the EDA, then I think we need to talk about very much how much effort are everybody willing to put in. Because you're right, these are big, heavy lifting type of things. And depending on, if you look at across here, we're all volunteers, and so therefore, you know, delivering on some of these are going to be a completely different story than having them as a framework.
and I think that's the question that the committee would be discussing. And that's
Yeah.
part of why I volunteered, is I agree with you, but that we should, as a group of people who want to dive into this in particular, we should be tackling those questions as opposed to the
committee
greater
is
board.
us here?
No, there's a strategic plan committee that we're
Yeah.
talking about forming right now.
Okay,
Do you
Yeah.
want to be part of that as well?
not yet. Let me,
Hey, Taryn, I'd like to be part of that. I think, honestly, where this is heading is, I think the group that's working on the combined strategic plan for the county and meshing it with the SEDS, I would hate for the EDA to come out with something that, I mean, we're going to have enough trouble trying to reconcile the county and the SEDS plan. I mean, the SEDS plan is sort of like it says a lot of platitudes, and it's got things in writing. It's going to take a lot to reconcile those. So I think if I would serve on this committee, I could make sure that whatever's coming out gets meshed with what we want to do, and it's all one unified plan, and that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction. My concern would be that we might, if we come out of the chutes with our own strategic plan, in absence of the input from the other, we might end up at two different places. So I would like to serve on it and help with that.
Jeff, I love that idea. I think my only concern is that, I guess I don't know, I'm not being as involved with CBRAC as you are. Is CBRAC driving us? Are we driving CBRAC? Or are we working together? And that's what I wanna understand, because I think, I agree, they should be aligned, but is that enough for just one person to be in the middle, or should there be a little bit more of a joint effort there?
We are really trying to keep the CBRAC part small right now.
Okay,
Intentionally to try to make sure we get things done. It's not going to be devoid of input from others. That's why we brought in the school system, because that was such a big point. I don't think one's driving the other, but I definitely think they need to be joined at the hip. So,
yes,
but I think the Board of Supervisors has charged, I'm not one of the elected people on the CBRAC, I'm one of the appointed ones. The Board of Supervisors has charged CBRAC with developing what the economic development plan for the county is through, I think it's 2035, isn't that right, Don?
Yeah, that's correct.
okay.
I mean, it's a really long-range thing, so I would say the CBRAC is vested with that by the Board of Supervisors as it stands right now. So
Got
we
it.
need to make sure that the EDA is joined at the hip with that, and we're all doing the same thing.
Thank you for the context. That makes sense.
Okay, so then
It's
I
an
have-
ad hoc, Taryn. It's an
Excuse me?
ad hoc, so I would say as far as having a really well-defined process of how it plugs into county government, there probably is not. It was an ad hoc committee that was, hey, we need to do this, and, Paul Shakatana was vested with that authority, as long as with a couple others, so it's not like it fits easily in an organizational chart with accountabilities and all that stuff
Sure,
at this
sure.
point either.
Okay, so then, just to make sure that I have the correct information here. So Jeff and Taryn are going to be working on the EDA strategic plan.
Sounds right.
Roy and Michael are going to be working on the EDA site, website update. I'm going to be doing the grant request form, and the ones that we have kind of left, we have the grant request process, as well as the financial committee. And we have individuals, we don't have Bruce here, and we don't have Sam here. So I can certainly kind of, grant request process goes kind of together with the grant request form. I can take a stab at
Yeah,
that and see.
I mean, what you have in place right now is more than has ever been in place.
I know.
Because, I mean, years ago, we would just get an email or a phone call to say, hey, we'd like to have, like to contact the EDA about getting a grant. So what you have in place now is a whole lot better than it's ever been. So, but yeah, I would agree that the formal grant request process goes hand in hand with the form.
It does,
Mhm.
yeah. So I will take those two on and see what I can come up with, and I guess one of the things I would, that I think is also important for our future, so to speak, and that is how are we gonna make more money?
I agree.
How are we gonna use kind of like the tool that we have with the 10 million? I mean, I would love to see 10 million being put out every year. How are we gonna get the marketing kind of associated with that? And I don't know whether we can, you probably shouldn't assign Bruce and Sam in their absence, but it is a very important topic, and it's a very important topic for what we can do with our strategic plan.
Sure.
So, using our existing tools, but also what can we do in addition to that? Is it worthwhile doing some type of angel funding? What type of other mechanisms of fundings are there for these type of organizations?
Can I ask, since there was a 2020 refocus, was there progress made on that effort last year, or?
No, not to my knowledge.
No.
Don, do you know anything?
No.
about that?
No.
Okay.
I don't think we started, we had some contacts, and I think, Jeff, you had some contacts with some angel funding over in Danville?
Danville,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Danville.
so that's really kind of like as far as we got, but we have explored being able to use our existing tool for using the bonds for having more extensive revenue. But in addition to that, the angel funding was kind of just explored very, very briefly. But I think we need and maybe that fits together with the strategic plan.
I think that makes sense.
But that's a big undertaking for you guys.
Charlotte, just,
Jeff, is that something
uh,
that you're willing
no,
to take on as
Yeah,
well?
just to, get back on the record, when we were going down the angel funding, it was right before COVID. But I think, remember when I was talking to the folks out there, somebody said, well, you just don't jump to angel funding. From a developmental plan, angel funding, they just said, is like 8th on your list. There are building blocks that you need to put in
Yeah.
front of that.
Yeah.
If you even end up with angel funding as one of your possible outcomes,
Yeah.
that's not the one you jump to. And so we didn't get any further exploring as far as from a developmental plan, what that is. I think angel funding is just an outcome that would come from our strategic planning process. I think a possible outcome, not even necessarily. So I think we need to,
Okay,
we don't need to jump to an outcome, is my opinion on that. So I
Right.
think it's part of the process, and that might be where we end up, and it might not be where we end up.
You're absolutely right, but I think one thing that we do need to address is how we use our existing tool for, you know, generating revenue, and how we can better position that. So is that part of the strategic plan as well, or is that a separate entity?
I'm gonna go on a tangent here for a second and ask Dawn a question about our legal structure. Can you tell me a little bit about the legal structure? Because I'm curious whether or not we could actually take donations, tax-deductible donations, that we could use as funding to give people. If somebody wanted a write-off at the end of the year, could they give the money to EDA? So it's not quite as structured as an angel fund, but something a little looser.
I believe you can.
Okay.
That's been what I've been led to believe by the council that has advised us.
Okay, just before I forgot, I wanted to ask that question.
And I just, you know, add too about the bond situation. I mean, in the past, those folks wanting bonds have sought us out. You know, it hasn't been the other way around.
Sure.
And so I don't know how you can solicit more bond issuances other than letting Sands Anderson and Dan Siegel know that, hey, throw something our way. That's it. I don't know of any other way to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we also talked about potentially going outside of Virginia. You know, and it sounded like we could do that if we wanted to. You know, as I said, if people are aware that we have this ability, I mean, because we also talked about the fact that, you know, if you're in a more urban setting, there might be more requests for your 10 million or whatever that is. And so therefore you might actually run out, and there might be opportunities there to leverage our 10 million, so to speak. So, but then again, they probably wouldn't know of a Lancaster EDA, right? So it's yes, we've been fortunate about having people come to us, but I don't know. How do we want to do the financial part? And if do we
I wanted to ask Jeff a question that would tone into this. Jeff, you've been on the board longer than any of us, and in the past, I don't think, at least since I've been on the board, I don't think that we've ever made any request from the state or the federal government until COVID hit to try to get money. But I do know that the state of Virginia does have certain funds that go to economic development authorities. The thing is, you have to ask for it. And I don't think before COVID that we really asked for any funds from the state or the federal government. Do you know if we ever did before?
No, I'm not aware, not in my tenure, have we ever done that.
Yeah, so I think it's the ask. If we don't ask for money from different sources that may have it, obviously we're not going to get it, but perhaps we didn't know about other sources of funding from the Virginia Economic Authority or the the federal government. And of course, we didn't get the federal government grant, and CARES Act, and did give the county money, which was great, and the county gave businesses money, but I don't see that continuing for too long in the future. So I think we just need to look at other sources like that are out there and make the ask, because we haven't previously. We may end up getting a windfall of $200,000. We don't know.
Agreed, Roy. I think we're seeing a lot of our neighboring counties getting community development block grants right now. And I think it probably goes to one of the later agenda items, because as I've heard a number of people say, we need someone to write the grants, but we're all volunteers. So that executive director position sounds interesting, as an interesting place to talk about that. But I agree with you 100%. Right. We should be finding a way to ask for grants.
Right, and that's great. And I'm just going to pull it back into the fact that these are objectives for individual members. So are we all going to be working on the financial, trying to figure out who we're going to be looking for, or are we going to be having somebody that can lead that effort? And if so, who is that?
I think we all should work on it, and there should be someone leading it, though, to make sure we're not someone to herd cats.
Exactly. No, I would prefer having somebody to lead it too. Do you have any suggestions?
You do a good job.
Would it be easier for us to ask for money if we have our strategic plan aligned? I mean, that way we can say, this year we need that for this year we need
it's
for
always
that.
Easier if you have,
so that as we're making these requests, they can see where we're going, where we are now, and what we're trying to do. And that gives them where they want to be in our cycle.
Right.
Yes.
So I think we're kind of, whether we want the money or not, yes.
Right.
But also, how do we account for it, or where do we want to be at the end of the day when we get it?
I think that's the benefit of the framework they initially adopted, is we can all, it's easy to tie our stuff back to our current strategic plan because it's so broad, so.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
so I think the
yeah,
first
yeah.
thing to do is
Yeah.
probably to take this committee, I'm not aware of it at all, so, but, just get that, just kind of line our steps up of going down this path. How do we, what's the first thing we want to do? What's the second thing?
Mm.
Let's go get the money for the first thing. And the people who are donating, if that's the path we want to go down, they see that this is where we want to be and this is where we want to go. Even if it's only the first three things, just align those things up. Then we'll know how much we want to go get and who's a focal point that we want to get it from. And also, it allows us to build a web page that focuses on those targets.
Michael, I disagree a little bit in that if we don't find a way to bring in more funding, at some point we become moot. I mean, our funding is entirely dependent right now on the bonds that are being issued, and we don't have necessarily the greatest advocate. We don't have an advocate within the county trying to bring money in. So if we don't find a way to be self-sustainable, it limits our ability to do things. So I think there's two different things. There's the financial committee focusing on making sure we're self-sustainable, and then also grants as well. So I think we've got to, I agree, we should have a strategic plan leading the grants, but I do think we need everybody on the financial committee really focused on funding ourselves.
Right, but yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I would tend to agree with Michael, though. I think I definitely and totally concur with needing to get additional sources of additional funds in, especially since the bond market seems to have dried up a little bit. But like right now, if we were to go ask, and somebody said, well, what are you going to do with it? Absent our plan, the plan we have is not defined enough that somebody go, oh, I'll give to that. So I think getting a plan together and understanding uses of what money would be makes prospecting for the sources a lot easier.
I 100%
Here's our
agree with
plan.
that. I just don't want it to be lost that I think it's really important. My point was just that we also can't lose sight of the fact that we need to be finding additional trying to find additional bond.
Yeah, and these are,
Yeah.
it's not sequential. We need to be working in parallel.
Sure.
So we're looking for sources. We don't necessarily go and ask until we're ready with a plan. I
Right.
completely agree with that. But I think at this point, we don't even know what sources there are available. So let's figure out what sources there are and then align that as much as possible
Right.
with the plan. So what I'm just saying is that can we give everybody an action, Crystal, to the next meeting, which is going to be next meeting in July? That each of us has to find, 2 or 3 sources of revenue, potential revenue. And I think, if we all are going to be working on it, because we do need to figure out some other way of making money.
Right.
Does that work? Is
Yeah.
everybody okay with that? Crystal, did you get that? Thank you. All right. So I'm just going to put financial committee for everyone, and then we have an action then to work on finding sources. And that can be, there can be people that donate, and we should let people know that if that's the case, Don. If we can do that, we should get Lancaster County to be able to, if they can write off against taxes at the end of the year. And everybody's always looking for being able to figure out how to deduct by the end of the year, right? So donations go up at the end of the year usually. So, okay, I'm going to move forward. Yeah. So one of the things I think we have here that we do need to figure out is how much effort are people willing to put towards these working on the EDA. And I put here as a suggestion, how many hours a month? Because I think we had some earlier mentioning, which is really not realistic. At one point, I think there was somebody that suggested 10 hours per quarter. And if we do that, we're not gonna get anywhere. I mean, I think that's fair to say. So how many hours a week, or how many hours a month are people really willing to put to working on some of the things that we just discussed, the websites and the strategic plan and grant process and so on and so forth? I'm gonna be quiet and let everybody else talk.
I guess from my perspective, Charlotte, I don't know how to quantify it in hours, but helping to work on the strategic plan here and working on that Citizens Business Advisory Committee is all the time that I can give. And I'd say that's well more than 10 hours a month based on where we're heading. But I'd be willing to commit that, but I can't go any further.
So can you specify what that was again? How many hours?
I don't know, but it's well in excess of 10 a month, I'm sure. I mean, the CBRAC committee takes a lot of work outside of that group as well as our meetings, and we're gonna be meeting. I don't know, we have our second meeting coming up. That's gonna be 2 to 3 hours. I can't quantify the hours because we don't know where the process is taking us, but it's a significant
So
investment of
basically,
time.
you're saying that you work on the CBRAC,
And tying
and-
in with the strategic plan that we're doing for the E EDA.
right, and so working on the strategic alignment with the CBRAC for the EDA, what do you envision that? Is that, what would that be? What type of effort, type of thing would that be?
I'm sorry, I could barely hear you. Could you repeat that?
How much, what does that look like, the aligning the EDA strategic plan with the CBRAC plan? What does that look like as far as effort?
Well, it's working with Taryn on the strategic planning committee, so I don't know what that's gonna look like, but I
I'm
would
talking
imagine
more
that's gonna entail
effort-wise.
several meetings a quarter, I'm sure,
Sure.
especially since we're generating an updated plan. I don't know, I really don't know how to get granular with that question because
Okay.
both processes are open-ended right now, Charlotte, so.
Okay. Okay,
From
Yeah.
my perspective, Jeff, what if we said we had one meeting a quarter and then whatever prep time? So instead of quantifying it by hours, we quantify it by our effort. So you and I at least will meet one meeting a quarter and then work on it in between via email. Does that make sense to you?
That would be great. It's a good start. You know, to produce a final document type might take more than one meeting a quarter, but
Sure.
let's start with that and see where it heads.
Yeah, exactly.
okay, that's fair enough. I take what I can get here, so, you know?
I mean, that CBRAC committee, Charlotte, just to quantify, I think we're gonna be meeting, we've deferred this one. I know we're gonna be meeting at least monthly, I would say every 2 to 3 weeks, you know, and until we come up with a document, which I would guess is at least, I don't know, 4 to 6 months out, in my opinion. I'm just guessing though, I don't know that.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna, you know, I understand that it's hard to granularize because it's kind of, it's connected in a way because you're gonna be working across. So I understand that that's, but I put down one meeting a quarter, so I guess at the next meeting, we could potentially have some updates from
Sure.
you.
Should we, I mean, would it make sense to focus on deliverables potentially instead of,
Well, if you don't spend any time, you're not gonna have any deliverables, and so that's really where I'm going. You know, if you can have some type of update from everybody at each meeting, I think that would
I
help.
like Karen's idea, that's gonna be more of a focal point than
yeah.
hours spent. Because
Yeah.
I agree with you that if you don't spend the time, you won't have it.
Right,
I could give 10 hours and someone else could give 2 hours, and neither one of us come up with anything. But if
Yeah,
we set a criteria,
the problem we've had, right, is that, and you can see that from the kind of like the grid here, is that we have assigned objectives as far as like, we were talking about the financial committee or the grant process, and then nothing happens. And each meeting we have, and we look for an update, there is no update because nobody spent any time. So whether you want to put it in hours per month or whether you want to put it as deliverables, if nothing happens, then,
Yeah,
you know, it's just like,
it's the same.
it doesn't really matter what you assigned it as.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just,
I'm not too sure how you measure this or how to even respond to it. I mean,
well, I guess what I'm saying is that we do need people to, because I mean, as I said with the economic or the financial committee that Crystal just captured, we look for 2 or 3 potential funds for the next meeting. That is a specific deliverable, right? But I don't know if we can do that for all the other things at this point. So I don't want to belabor the point. You know, if we can't assign this at this point, I don't want to force it. But if it's what do you guys think? Do we need this? Because I've seen a lot of, you know, we need to have a little bit more engagement, I would say, if we're going to have to try, if we're going to actually get some progress on some of these.
Well, you know, I think progress has been slow, but I certainly think we've made a lot of progress in the last 2 years at least on objectives, strategic goals, mission statements, and things like that. You know, a lot of us go to different community meetings. I try to go to the town council meetings of Irvington. I've been to, you know, Kilmarnock, Whitestone. I've been to all of their business meetings and everything, trying to find out what's going on in the community and what kind of direction and new businesses they're looking at, that type of thing. And actually, we have an initiative this Wednesday night to really get the ball rolling in a certain area. So I think all of us probably do that to a certain extent. We meet with either communities or meet with groups, and that's I consider that part of the time that I spend, even though it's not a measurable here. At least I can bring to those communities some of the things that we're looking at, and some of the ways that we're trying to advance entrepreneurship in the county. So I don't know if you could measure those in hours or anything. It doesn't seem like I can come with a committee report and say, well, we've done this, 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 and this right away, but we're moving forward, I think. And I appreciate everything that you've done to really get us to start moving forward on this. I know that we've made measurable gains in the last couple of years, Charlotte, because you've given us some direction to work for.
All right, maybe we'll try to, if everybody has had some time to think about this, and maybe we'll revisit it at the next meeting and see whether, you know, whether we can get somewhere on that.
Okay.
I think we need to move on, actually, because there are some things that is pretty important, that if we go to slide 3, because this will have direct impact on a grant request update, or a grant request in July. This is what's on the website? Did we go to slide 3? There we go. So these are the list of criteria for evaluating grant requests that we currently have. So this is what people see when they fill in the form. And to Roy's comment from last meeting, you know, we hope that we get more people to come and ask for money, but A, we need to have the money, which goes back to our previous discussion. And then B, we need to make sure that our criteria is pretty solid so that we can decide on who should get the money and who should not get the money. So these are the list of criteria to evaluate the grant request. And we have award above 10,000 only as an exception, both for nonprofit and for-profits. And that has resulted in everybody asked for 10,000, which is not surprising. We have also said that nonprofit would be more likely to have a recurring request awarded, but not automatic. And that goes back also to the lead Northern Neck situation that we had, you know, with the fact that they've come back every year, and we really need to kind of reevaluate that next time they come. because it's been a reoccurring request, I think, for 7 years now. So, yeah, we need to wonder whether we are part of their operating budget, maybe. We also want to prioritize unique business to the area. I don't know if we necessarily identify what unique means, but that we can discuss that for sure. Prioritize the infrastructure build-out, and that goes along with the strategic goals, and goal number 1 that we had there. We also want to prioritize when matching funds are available, because of the fact that we feel that that's kind of been endorsed by other entities, and therefore would have more, potentially a higher success rate. Prioritize if they're an enterprise opportunity or hub zone applicant. And then the number of jobs saved, improved business climate. Those are hard things to come up with, but we said 1 FTA created, awarded, index to the grant, and business climate improved, number of events, social media share uptake, and so on and so forth. And we also said then realistic plan in place. We're going to add to that now what we talked about, that the money needs to be used within 6 months, and if not, the check is null and void. Is there anything else that you guys see that jumps off the pages here that we need to add, did you think, or change?
Hey, Charlotte, I don't know how to even capture this, but the request that gets my mind sort of spinning in circles is when it's coming from a private business, and it's, I get that picking winners and losers feel to it. You know, like, how is this business who's asking for money any different than the one 5 miles down the road that's not? So that's where my mind starts doing gymnastics, and I can't quite reconcile. You know, the example that I come up with was the one we had a year or 2 ago for the oyster farming. And granted, there was a need there, but, you know, there were other competitors who didn't. So maybe you can't put that in any qualifications, but if anything that would help filter that would be very beneficial to me.
Yeah, so you're basically saying that you want to make sure that we're not just giving money to somebody because they come and request it. You want there needs to be some other criteria that is met. Is that correct?
Yeah, like, let me give a little hyperbole, and maybe that'll help define the point more. Say like and this is just hypothetical, this does not apply to the actual request. But say we have an oyster farmer come in that needs startup capital to get an oyster farm going, and wants to ramp up this production, and has pro formas to reflect it, and here's what it's going to do. And, you know, there's another oyster farmer who's invested their own capital and is doing the exact same thing. Is the only difference between one of them raise their hand and ask for it? Should they get it? And they're getting, quote, free money from the county to help something that's anti-competitive to the person who put their own private capital in. That would be an example where if somebody asked me, why in the heck did you give money to them? There are 5 other businesses that are in the exact same boat like it. What's your distinguishing criteria? I don't know if I could answer that question very well.
I think it goes
Does that
back
make sense?
to our strategic plan, though. What is our goal? Our goal is to help startup businesses. Or, I mean, in my mind, like, I would think that our goal is to help businesses get off the ground. And I would say matching funds would probably be required as well, I think is a good way to do it. I don't know that, I think in many other economic development authorities, I mean, I've had a little bit of exposure, this isn't really a question, because the goal is not competition, it is seeing businesses get off the ground and succeed. So you're not picking winners and losers so much as you are trying to see that businesses get started.
But still, Taryn, on that, if the business has invested their own private capital in doing the exact same thing, how do you distinguish? And then why would that business who's starting up on their own go, well, hell, they got $10,000. I'm gonna file next time and then get that $10,000 to replace some of my private capital that went into starting my business. You see what I'm saying, or is that?
No, I do. This one is a little on the money for me since that was me. So I think I was that private oyster farmer, so there's a little,
I mean, I'm not saying the circumstances were yours, I'm just using
No,
that
I
as a
know, I know.
hypothetical.
I'm just trying to separate myself from this. So I'm having a hard time answering just because I don't want there to seem like there's any bias in my response. No, I do. I think there is, anytime you start a business, you're putting private capital into it though as well. So I think that's just part of it needs to be part of our criteria is maybe there is matching funds. That way there is private equity invested. Because ultimately, if you don't have that private equity, you can't succeed to begin with.
Right.
So I think it's just a disparity in terms of what our goal is, and maybe that's part of the strategic plan is just making sure that is really our focus, because it's, I think it's just triggering more in what is our mission, because it's, yeah.
And I think also the fact, Jeff, if you think back, we gave $10,000 to the donut shop down in Whitestone, right? And that was at the point when they had just started. And they needed, I don't know if it was a new oven or what, there was some type of capital investment that they had not taken into consideration in their initial plan. And we funded that. Now the question is the donut shop unique because they sell donuts? And we don't have another donut shop here? Or could you compare that to a cafe that is also kind of like, it's very similar, right? The donut shop sells coffee, the other place sells coffee. I don't know if the regular cafe has donuts or if they have muffins. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying to you though is that the local could say the same thing. Well, we sell coffee, we sell muffins. Maybe if we get donuts, we can get $10,000 from the EDA. I mean, it's.
I just don't know if you're trying to not pick winners and losers, how you ever give money, because ultimately there's always competition.
Well, could I add to that? When you said the donut shop, they came to us with a very good business plan. They're hiring 4 employees. They're not taking any money out of the business themselves. And I know that they put in, well over 6 figures into the initial startup of their own money. There's a bakery in Whitestone also that's across the street.
Right.
And we did not get an application from them. They did not have really a business plan. They were like a lot of mom and pops. They start out and don't know that there's money available. So I don't think we're really picking winners and losers. We are trying to be fair, and we judge every single applicant or grantee individually when they come to us. And some people have wonderful business plans, but it may not meet the objectives or the goals of what we've set up to give grants for. So, I remember when I started a business, I was in my garage. I didn't know there was any money available to me. All I knew is I had to try to scrape up whatever money I had to start a business. And that's what a lot of small businesses do, especially in rural areas. So the ones that do come to us with grants, we judge, we look at their objectives, we look at their business plan, and we try to assess how that's going to help the community, how that's going to help the county. For instance, the grant we gave for the gasoline pump. We think that that's great for the area and for the marine industry and availability of fuel for boats, and that will help move the economy forward, move the county forward. So I think it's an individual basis that comes to us. We're not going to try to pick winners and losers. We just have to look, and sort of getting the word out there by attending meetings and networking and everything. We'll probably be getting more grants in the future. So I think our focus really should be on raising money so that we have money available to fund these businesses and get the word out that, we'll try to help them when we can. And if we can't help them with the monetary, at least we might be able to help them with social networking or some other way to get the word out.
100% agree.
I saw the business plan that the donut shop had, and it was extensive. They really did their homework. They looked at competition. They looked at everything. And I talked to them before they had opened, and I said, I'm a little worried because there's a mom and pop bakery right across the street from you. And they said, well, the only donuts they have are glazed donuts. We're more specialty. And he said, and the nice thing is when people come in, we're going to tell them there's a bakery across the street. You can go get your cakes and your pies and your cookies and everything else. So he said, we think that we'll actually benefit that bakery because we'll be pulling in people that may not know there's a bakery there.
But
So
I
we-
also think that, we've been very fortunate or unfortunate, however you want to look at it, right? Because we've had a couple, sometimes maybe 3, sometimes not only 1, grant request each time. And so if you look at our track record, there's not that many that we have not funded. All right? So we basically have been, and especially prior to having any criteria, most of the grants that were requested were funded. And so if you get to the point where you have more requests coming in that you have money to meet those, then it becomes a different story. That you actually do have to turn some down. And we haven't turned that many down. So, criteria is important to have on the books. Now, as I said, I will add the one about the check to this, but other than that,
I'd just like to add one thing. Maybe this will get to Jeff's point, but the grants that the county applies for, the different departments within the county, most of them require a match. So maybe you all just started giving grants to for-profit businesses. Maybe one of the criteria should be that for for-profit businesses, a match is required.
I agree with that. Don, I was going to suggest that we quantify the match for for-profit businesses to 50% at least. I mean, the idea is to help startup businesses, so I don't think it necessarily needs to be 100% match, but at least 50% is what I would recommend quantifying it as.
so help me word this.
Well, let's make sure there's consensus
Yeah,
first.
exactly, of course.
Yeah. Roy, Michael, Jeff.
My initial thought on this sheet was, are all of these weighted the same in terms of our evaluation? And if not, should we go through each of these items and create a weighted average concept? Like we just talked about, for-profit businesses having a matching fund. Give that a value of 6. Does it have create new jobs? Give that a value of 10. Does it prioritize unique to the area? Give that a value of 5. If we sort of assess this on the basis of a weighted average, we make this subjective as opposed to objective. And our criteria for evaluation becomes a little more focused on where we want to be at the end of the day, because that tells us that, once again, where do we want to be when we grow up? What's the priority here? What do we think is important, and how do we get there? The only way I can think of doing this is to take each one of these and give them a value. What's the most important? Each time someone is presented, did they meet it? If it's a 10, they got 6 out of the 10, give them the 10. At the end of the day, add all of these points up and say, this is where we are. That was my initial thought in looking at this.
I very much like that idea. I think that would make our assessment more quantitative. In other words, we can hit on each of those, and whoever gets the higher value or lower value, whatever, how you want to set it up, is the more, more prioritized type of grantee. I think that's a great idea.
And I'm not saying we have to do it as a group. We can, each business that comes along, we could set this criteria, and everybody gives them their own opinion of what they thought this value was. At the end of the day, go over, tally it up somewhere and say, guess what we came up with as a weighted average for this business. Now, we can add another step to that, which makes it more complicated. Is there a minimum criteria that has to be met after this value is totaled and or tallied? And did that business meet it? Did they get the money or not? If not, do we go back to them, discuss it? This is what you're missing, because this is where we want to be.
I think if you quantify it to make it objective as opposed to subjective, you would have to put a minimum in there to avoid it being any kind of discrimination. The point where it's that rigid, you would need that.
So I'm sorry.
I said at the point when you quantify it and create an index, I think you would have to have a minimum for approval of a grant. Otherwise, you're opening yourself up. You've created an objective process and then gave a subjective opportunity for approving things. So I think you would have to have a minimum to avoid discrimination.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I don't know if we're there.
Well, I think what we do for today, I'd like to hear more about the 50% match required. I'm going to add that in. And Michael, I just added you onto the grant request process objective, and you can work with me on coming up with a grid. How about
Sounds
that?
good.
Roy or Jeff, did you guys have an idea on what a match should be?
Yeah, I think your suggestion of at least 50% is a great start.
I do too, I agree there.
Okay.
You know, I know that the two of you are newer on the board. In the past, when I joined the EDA, most of our grants were all for nonprofits. It's really just been in the last year and a half or so we've sort of segued into businesses and entrepreneurship that we're giving the money. So a lot of the grants that we've had in the past were always recurring grants. So I think the direction that we're moving to try to spur entrepreneurship and new businesses, and especially employment, is a great direction. And to give a grant with the matching 50%, I think is really a great way to go. Because we really have sort of changed direction to a certain
Yeah.
degree.
So 50% match required? And can that be by their own money or anybody's money? Do we want to clarify how that's supposed to be?
I don't think it matters if they've done their due diligence to raise the funds, because if they're getting private
Yeah.
capital, that's not necessarily their
Yeah.
money either, so.
It could be from family or the bank or,
Yeah.
Private
long-term
or
raising.
public, okay?
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I have those things clear, and I will add that.
I think ultimately the idea behind that is just making sure that they're serious enough to earn it.
I think anything we can add to these criteria that make it clear and make it clear for us who
Mhm.
we're going to be awarding these grants to. I think that helps. So I appreciate that. I think that's a great idea. Okay, anything else that you guys want to add to the criteria? Or should we move on?
The criteria, something be that this grant is helping make them more self-sustainable, that ultimately be it, that way we're not expecting them to come back and ask for more later. This is something to help really get their business off the ground and then become a self-sustainable business, so we're not seeing requests year after year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that is why we have that second bullet. Nonprofit would be more likely to have a recurring request awarded, but not automatic. That we don't expect this to be a recurring. We don't want to be part of people's operating budget, because I don't think I don't think so. This is, but how do you want to word that if we add that to that?
Well, just that the grant request would be intended to help businesses become self-sustaining, or ventures, not businesses, ventures be self-sustaining. I think that makes it clear, because I think that question acknowledges that they'll ask money, but it doesn't tell them that we're not encouraging it.
Okay.
But again, that's just one thought, so I don't want to be dictating here. Does anybody else have thoughts on that?
I like it. I think
Yeah.
it's good.
That's good.
Yep. Okay, with that, I'm going to move on to the next topic on the agenda. And the last topic of this session, or this piece here, is really, number 5 is about the Economic Development Director. Timing and funding. And we've talked about this topic several times before. I think it would certainly help the EDA tremendously if we had that position that we could work with and kind of drive some of these things forward. But I don't know anything about timing or any of that other aspect, so I'm just gonna.
I can help you with that.
Okay, do you want to make a motion to make that request? Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Board of Supervisors fully intends to fund an assistant county administrator position beginning July 1 for FY '22. And a main focus, if not the main focus of that position, would be economic development. So in the next couple of months, I'll get an advertisement out for that position. I've got to write the job description, and hopefully sometime in July, that person will be in place. I envision that person probably taking over my seat here at your EDA meetings so that they can help guide you at that point, or just be on the same page. So that's the plan.
Did you say July 2022?
July
Fiscal
1 this
22.
year, which is the beginning of FY '22.
Yeah,
Oh, I see,
beginning of
okay.
the
Yes.
next
All right,
fiscal
gotcha,
year.
all
Yes.
right. Oh, that's great news.
So will you all be interviewing shortly for a
It will,
position? Or?
well, like I said, I've got to come up with the job description, and then
Okay.
I've got to get the advertisement out for the position, and take applicants and then schedule interviews. And I can include a couple members from the EDA possibly on that interview panel.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
that would
I-
be, that would be
yeah.
fantastic, yeah.
so
So, how
I
is
think
this,
that's great.
how is
It's
this?
great progress, Don.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. How is this position going to be working with, you got the EDA, you got the CBRAC, you got all the, because I assume that this is,
Well, I foresee that person taking my place in the CBRAC meetings as well.
Right.
Because I have multiple other job responsibilities, but, that's where I see this person going.
right, but the CBRAC is still going to be something,
The CBRAC is, as Jeff said, it's an ad hoc committee. The Board of Supervisors just created that because they wanted business entity leaders telling them what should the county be doing to entice businesses to come to the county.
okay,
And the EDA is an arm that can give grants out to, for instance, for-profit businesses, because the county cannot do such. So the EDA has, a responsibility there. The EDA also issues the bonds. So that's, it's a place for both of those entities. And as Jeff said, I don't see one driving the other. I see them working together. And
gotcha.
so, and I think the Economic Development Director / Assistant County Administrator, whatever that official title will be part of that as well.
Fantastic, and
That's great news.
Good.
Yeah, that is great news. Thank you so much for that. Wow. Okay. Okay, is there anything else that we want to kind of add to that first agenda, the internal EDA updates? Anybody else want to add anything to that before I go on to the second?
Charlotte, the only thing I would add is, I don't know where it stands, but I did get a call about 3 weeks ago from Wally Beecham as to would I be willing to serve on the Go Virginia Region 6 committee? And I thought about it, and I said, that's an economic development
Yeah.
group coming out of the state, the Commonwealth. And I said I would. I don't know whether I'll be approved or not, but I might have that liaison there with that more regional group when we're talking what Rory was saying about funding or stuff. But
That's
just to
fantastic.
throw that into the mix, I don't know where that'll go.
That is really good news, because, obviously they have there's opportunities for funding through Go Virginia, so that is great. Thank you for that, and yeah, we will follow up on that, and obviously, you know, hopefully you'll have some good insight from that process and how we can align ourselves with potentially getting some refund, in terms of getting
Yeah,
some
well,
revenue through there.
We'll put some of your hours towards the hours committed to
Yeah,
the EDA.
thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for what you
Yeah,
do,
no,
Jeff.
absolutely. Believe you me, you can, especially if that's a successful endeavor on our part. Okay.
Yeah, I think Jeff puts in more like 10 hours a week for everything he does, so,
Well,
thank you, Jeff.
so I'm going to move on to the next portion then, and that is really about our external kind of picture or image. I have a couple of points here that I thought was important. One that I wanted to see how everybody thought about is that, and this is something that would go on our existing website and also then potentially moving over to a new website if we get that far. You know, I think from a public perspective, I think it would be helpful to have a list of our previous grantees and the grant amounts on the website, so that people can see where the money has been awarded to. And I don't know what everybody else thinks about that.
Well,
I think that's
I
a
have some
great idea.
reservations about that, simply because I think that...
Hang on, Jeff, were you saying something?
Go ahead, Roy. I think it's a great idea. I mean, we're a public entity, they're public funds. I think getting we do sort of operate under a bushel basket a little bit. I think anything we can do to get ourselves out from under that bushel basket from a public perspective, I think is great. But I'd be interested in what Roy has to say.
Well,
Go ahead, Roy.
I have reservations just because I think the public, you know, seeing this may not be aware of some of the decision-making behind some of the grants that we've given in the past. You know, one in particular was Save the Rappahannock Coalition. People are going to look at that and say, well, how does that translate to business environment? How does that translate to this or that? You know, they might think it's a political thing that we gave the money to Save the Rappahannock. We looked at it as preserving the nature of our community and helping with tourism and not looking like Hampton Roads with these huge towers that were going to be constructed. And, you know, when they see some people are going to look at it and say, well, why did they fund that business and not this other business? I think it could be a judgmental thing. You know, I don't know if we could just list, say we have given money to nonprofits, we've given money to organizations that have helped create jobs and everything. If we list every single one of them, and some of these businesses may not want to be listed, I don't know, or some of the organizations. So that's, you know, that's my reservations, is it could become a judgmental thing for people seeing it and questioning what we're doing or why we gave certain grantees. For instance, you know, the donut shop, why did they get $10,000 instead of some other business? Or why did we give business to some of the nonprofits that seem to be funded a lot with angel funds and certain philanthropy and everything else and get hundreds of thousands of dollars? Why did we have to put $10,000 into it?
I have a thought.
I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were
Yeah,
done.
go ahead.
Oh, so, but I have to ask Down a question. Our meetings, one, are now part of a public archive, right? Where these meetings are now currently being recorded and posted online? So, and everything is available via FOIA anyway?
Yes, correct.
Okay. What if we just did it moving forward? So everything that happened in the past is done, but we start publishing it moving forward since it's all available via public record anyway? Would that address your concern a little bit?
I don't have any problem with that at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's all public knowledge anyway. If
Yeah.
Yeah, it
someone-
is.
If someone
Yeah.
FOIA'd it, I'd have to tell them.
Sure.
So,
You can run, but you can't hide.
that's right.
And all the minutes are on the website.
That's
So if
correct.
you want to go back and see what was awarded and who voted what, you can go back and see that. And so I think in the kind of spirit of transparency, and also for people that are maybe considering putting in a grant request, for them to have some idea of, well, I would want to know that. If I were considering putting in a grant, I would go like, okay, who got the grant last time?
I do understand what Roy's saying, though. I think having the video recordings gives people additional context to the conversations that's not captured by minutes. So I think maybe we can put a mount online of what we've done without the business name, do the business names moving forward, and then there's also maybe something in the form that says you are allowing us to publish this information. I'm aware of that. Not to say that they shouldn't, because they should know that it'd be available via FOIA, but give context to our decisions via the video, and also make people aware moving forward that that's going to happen.
In my opinion, I think we ought to present it all, just from past disparities, and I don't even know what they are, but at least define it. So maybe only go back to 5, maybe 10 years. I don't know how long this EDA has been in place, but at some point we need to define what we've done with our money. We're public accountabilities of monies, public funds.
Yeah.
And to say that we've been doling it out on a, what do you call it, secretive basis or non-publicized basis is not, it doesn't help society develop anymore.
I don't think we'd be hiding it, because I think we would maybe make the minutes more prominent so people can find it.
Yeah, if we don't disclose it, it's hidden.
Yeah, I would prefer that we put all of it out there.
Okay.
That we put the what we have, and people are going to question. There are always going to be people.
On the website you're talking about.
There's going to be a link that basically just had a spreadsheet, and I'll be happy to put that together. It's just going to be year, grantee, amount, and that's it. And, if you want to add anything more to that, we can, but I think in the spirit of transparency, I think if it's there, people can go and take a look at it. If they have any questions, it's the same thing as you have with Board of Supervisors. Why do people vote one way versus the other? Sometimes you agree with it, sometimes you don't agree with it, and that's just happens, that's the nature of the game. So.
It's
I
part of the
would probably
public
put
record.
everything out there.
How about, I think it would be powerful to have whatever, pick a term like 10 years, and give the cumulative amount that the Economic Authority has given out for the economic development of Lancaster County that has not come from taxpayer dollars. Because I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that misperception is still there too. And I think that's good for us, and it's good for the county
Yeah.
too, for having had the foresight to have an IDA/EDA.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I think that's an important thing to add in there, that it's a non-taxpayer dollar, yeah, and the fact that, but I do think to have everything in a simple spreadsheet, and we'll just put it in a link on the website. Everybody can go and take a look at what has been awarded, and it's available for future grantees, and it also gives us the transparency that I think we kind of owe the public.
Don, I think the EDA was formed in, I think, 1974
It's been,
And-
it's been a while.
with the county. And so we've got to go back many years if we're going to come up with cumulative. I don't know how soon we started doing grants after we had been founded, but
I don't know the answer to that.
yeah, that would be a pretty tedious project. But Jeff, I agree with you. It'd be nice to have a cumulative amount that would be on the website that we've given out $873,000 worth of grants to businesses and nonprofits in the county.
Yeah.
Trying to list all of them, the previous ones. We could, if we could go back 10 years, if you want to list them, we need to have a certain cutoff point, because the county just can't spend all that time trying to
Yeah.
go through 50 years of records
Sure.
to list it, although maybe we can come up with somewhat of a figure,
All right,
if that's easy. I mean, a lot of these records were pre-computer and everything else, and I can see people going through files and files and files just to come up with an amount. But
Well,
it
how
would be
about-
nice to come
how
up,
about if
you
we
know, if we say in the
do-
last 10 years,
yeah.
we've given out $240,000 worth of grants to local businesses, nonprofits, and so on, and if you want to list them, that's fine. I just have reservations about listing the actual people that have been awarded to, because other people are going to say, well, gosh, you know, I just started a brewery in Kilmarnock 3 years ago. I didn't get any money from them. Well, they didn't make an application. But all of a sudden, some people are going to say, well, how come I wasn't notified, or how come I didn't know about this, you know? Or why did they give it to them and not to me if someone was turned down?
Right, I'll go through as much as I can, and I'll reach out to you, Don, and try to get the rest, and I'll do 10 years. And then we'll go from there. Because I think 10 years, and then we can get the cumulative amount, Jeff, for 10 years. And we'll see if there's, I'll send it around and see if there's any comments on it, and then we'll put it on the website.
To make sure I understand, so we're talking about just a cumulative amount for 10 years, or also listing the grant?
No.
Also listing the, okay, I have no
Also listing
objection to
it.
either.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I
So it
understood.
will just be a spreadsheet, and at the end, it's just an Excel spreadsheet that counts the cumulative amount.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, good. Do we need to do a motion and a decision on that, or?
I'd so move.
A
There you go.
second.
Okay.
Okay, motion on the floor, and the motion is, Jeff? To list the last 10 years?
My motion would be to include a cumulative in the listing of grantees for the last 10 years. And maybe a point of discussion is whether we include the dollar amounts next to each grantee or not. I don't care, but I think the individual grantees should be listed. That would be my motion.
Okay. So
I think
hopefully
it's a
just a
great idea.
cumulative amount, you're saying not the amount to each grantee, but cumulatively, and list the grantees?
I think it's important. to
I would
have that.
defer, I would, maybe that takes the edge off it for you a little bit, Roy. I'm fine either way, personally.
It is important to me that the individual amounts are there, because I think it gives us the necessary transparency of what people have previously, been awarded. Because if we just have the cumulative amount there, it could be, huge amount for one, and then very, very little for the others. I think it's important to have that
Does it-
transparency.
As someone who's applied before, it would have been helpful to have known what the amounts were, but I think that $10,000 kind of changes things. So I do wonder, you've had larger grant amounts than the $10,000 in the past.
Yes.
So you're gonna open yourself up, not that I'm saying there's an issue with this. I was gonna say, we're gonna open ourselves up to questions about the change, so I just think we should have language explaining that there's a change in policy.
That's fine, we can do that.
Yeah, that's my thought too,
Yeah.
also.
That's all part of transparency, though.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Right.
I'm not
right
just,
now, if you say nothing, nothing happened in the past.
right, I'm just trying to proactively get ahead of the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, and that's fine, and I think, I think we all can speak to that. I don't think that there's any problem with that. So we're gonna put a transparency, we're gonna put a list together with cumulative and individual amounts, and the grantees on the website for the next 10 years, with language to explain the change going from higher amount to the 10,000 max that we have now. That's, yes?
So that's the amended motion?
Yes,
on
that's
the
the
floor?
amended motion.
You got it, Crystal?
And Jeff, you were seconding that?
I'm
Okay.
seconding that.
Jeff's got a second. We have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
I think it's a great idea.
Yes,
All in favor, make known by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And I only oppose it because I think we shouldn't, I know about transparency, but I think if we have a cumulative amount, and how much has been awarded to all of these different organizations over the year, that would be sort of self-explanatory and not judgmental on certain people's parts. So that's the only reason I objected. But motion carries 4-1.
okay. The other 2 points I have on here is about public awareness of the EDA. Is there, previously, I gave a type of talk at the library, I think it was last year, year before that, something like that, not last year, that would not have happened.
Year
Before
yeah.
that, kind of giving people an idea what the EDA was. And I think we would, I think we need to broaden, because, you know, to Jeff's point that we operate a little bit in the, what was that, the term, bushel?
Under a bushel.
Under the
Under a
bushel
bushel.
basket.
And I think it, you know, to try to get people to understand that this, we do exist
Yeah.
and what we do, I think we need to get some more public awareness around that. In line with that, I also think that, you know, if you look at who our grantees have been, I would like to see a little bit more diversity in our grantees.
I second that.
Yeah,
And I don't know.
totally agree with that, yeah.
How we can kind of go about that, you know, because we're not reaching those demographics currently. So those are 2 points. I don't know if anybody has any views, comments.
Do we need a marketing, should we have a marketing initiative, marketing committee that actually works on this? Or, because I have a couple ideas, but if it's not a sustained effort, is it gonna be successful?
I'm definitely open for that. I just don't know, I don't have enough background in that area to really kind of do anything more than putting the points on here.
Sure, because I think you could.
Well, you know,
Go ahead, Roy.
as far as, you know, the diversity and public awareness, I think that's a great idea. I think the biggest issue that we have right now is money, because we can get the word out and have a lot of grantees come to us and have to turn a lot down, or just give a grant for $1,000 here or $2,200 there for certain businesses. Without the funding, without having to get big corpus of money to draw from,
Yeah.
we give awareness to people, and then all of a sudden, we just don't have the money to help them. But through marketing, maybe we could help them, or word of mouth or something. But, you know, I would love to have a couple $100,000 in our bank so that we could have more people come to us.
Yes.
I really think we need to focus on raising money, whether it's philanthropy or whether it's angel funding or whether it's going after federal and state grants to get some money.
Yeah.
Because without money, it's going to be tough. Now, I think having a director is going to be great through the county, and also will help free up some of your time, Don. But I think that would be great, and that's a good step in the right direction to all of a sudden maybe get some public awareness of
Yeah.
having someone that's heading up this whole entrepreneur spirit and can network with all the different, you know, tentacles that we have going out to CBRAC and other organizations to get the word out that we're open for business and we want new business and we'll help new business. We can give them grants. We can, you know, give them some incentives to move here from elsewhere. So, love to have the marketing, but I think we got to really market the money and get some in the bank first.
As an initial baby step, would it make sense, once we have that 10-year cumulative number, to just generate a press release to the Rappahannock Record and sort of give the basis of, you know, here's Lancaster's EDA, here's our purpose, here's what we do, and here's the amount that we've given out to our community over the last 10 years, and then point them to the website or something.
It's a great idea.
The record will run it.
Mm-hmm.
If we do that, I think that's a nice first domino to fall, maybe.
Yeah.
If we write the article, the record will publish it. And I think we could do that very favorably, you know, for us.
Could we also request coverage of our meetings? When they cover every other meeting, why not cover this one?
Is anybody on Zoom, Glenn? No? Okay. I can't answer that question.
I can reach out to Jackie Nunnery over there and ask. But I do think, and maybe that's the point, that to Roy's point, we started a marketing committee, and that marketing committee actually starts first with marketing our bonds outside of Virginia and see if there are opportunities there. Or in Virginia, just, I don't know enough about the competitive landscape of our bonds versus others. That's definitely more of a Jeff question.
Well,
But,
Jeff had mentioned previously about, you know, the bond market and the interest rates and everything. Interest rates are so low right now that I think even Dan Siegel said, you know, to get 1/8 of 1 point for us, is tough because some counties are going out getting bonds and not even taking any money for themselves. So it's really competitive.
Okay.
Yeah, you just
So-
have to find that place where, you know, they're looking for it and they don't have enough on their own. And, you know, being there, so, yeah, I mean, I agree with all the points raised that, you know, we don't wanna do too much of a public awareness without the funds, so
Sure.
it's kinda like the chicken and the egg in a way.
Is our $10 million federally funded or state funded? Because I'm just wondering if other states have the same initiative going that we're competing against.
I don't know about the other states, but in Virginia, it is 10 million for each county.
Okay.
I believe that's a federal IRS mandate.
Okay,
Don, I
gotcha.
think that has been adopted by the states, is
Yeah.
my understanding of it, but I might be wrong.
Okay, so we might have the same competition outside.
Yeah, well, it's worthwhile looking into.
Sure.
Okay, I don't know if was there any decisions or actions from that at all, or we think
I-
that all those are good points?
Who's going to draft the press release?
A press release,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I'll make a stab at it once I have that if somebody gives me that cumulative number, once we do it, I'll make a stab at it and send it out to the group and see if it reads okay and I can get it submitted.
Okay,
Thank you,
Sounds
Jeff.
good. Thanks, Jeff.
sounds good.
Okay, we can move on to the meeting minutes. The consideration of approval. Has everyone read the minutes from the last meeting?
Yep.
Crystal, I want to thank you for all that because we did have some issues with the, in that last meeting. And I don't think that we heard everything that was said by Jerry. And so anyway, I want to thank you because that was really a great synopsis of what was done. Do we have approval of last minutes? Make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
And a second? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Is there any other business? Any new or old business to discuss? If not, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
A second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, our next EDA meeting is Thursday, July the 15th
At 8:30?
at 8:30. Thank you.